The colony world of Rivora was quiet, with wide green fields, shining rivers, and tall blue-leaf trees that bent in the wind like dancers. Families from Earth had come here to start new lives, and among them was a small family of 3. They had a little house near the forest edge. The father worked with the colony builders. The mother took care of the home and garden, and their daughter Mira spent most of her time exploring. Mira was only 8 years old, but she had a heart full of curiosity. She loved to walk barefoot in the soft grass, collect shining stones by the river, and follow butterflies that shimmered in the strange Rivora sunlight. Unlike other children, she did not get bored when she was alone. She enjoyed speaking to the trees and pretending the wind was answering her back. One warm morning, Mira wandered farther than usual. The sun had just risen and the air was cool. Birds with crystal wings flew above her, and she hummed a tune as she picked wild berries. Suddenly, she heard a faint cracking sound near the riverbank. At first, she thought it was a branch breaking, but when she looked closely, she saw something unusual. A large, oval-shaped egg lay half buried in the sand. It was not like a bird's egg. Its shell was silver, shining faintly as if made of glass and stone together. Thin cracks ran across its surface, and something moved inside. Mira's eyes widened. She crouched down, brushing sand away gently with her small hands. The egg cracked again, louder this time. A piece of shell broke off, and through the gap she saw a small glowing eye staring back at her. Mira gasped but did not run. Instead, she whispered softly, "Hello? Are you inside?" The egg shook once more. With a final snap, the shell split open, and out came a tiny creature unlike anything Mira had ever seen. It had soft scales that shimmered green and gold, small wings pressed close to its back, and a long tail that curled nervously. Its eyes were bright, almost like stars, and its little chest rose and fell quickly as it breathed. For a moment, both Mira and the creature stared at each other. The hatchling tilted its head, unsure if it should flee. Mira felt her heart beating fast, but instead of fear, she felt wonder. Slowly, she stretched out her hand, though she did not touch it. "You're not ugly," she whispered with a smile. "You're a little cutie." The hatchling blinked. Its tiny nostrils flared, and it gave a soft chirp, almost like a baby bird calling. Mira giggled, the sound light and warm. The hatchling did not move away. It lowered itself to the ground, watching her carefully as if trying to understand her voice. Mira sat cross-legged in the sand, keeping her movements slow so she would not frighten it. She picked a berry from her small basket and rolled it toward the hatchling. The creature sniffed it, then snapped it up quickly, chewing with tiny teeth. Mira clapped her hands softly. "You like that, don't you?" she said. The hatchling chirped again, louder this time, and flapped its little wings clumsily. It tumbled over in the sand, and Mira laughed, covering her mouth so as not to scare it. She could not believe what she was seeing. It was as if the forest itself had given her a secret friend. Above them, the strange birds circled, but Mira felt safe. The hatchling did not seem dangerous. In fact, it looked almost shy. When Mira leaned closer, the creature sniffed her hand carefully, then licked her finger with its tiny tongue. She giggled again. "I think I'll call you Lumo," she said suddenly, "because your eyes shine like little lights." Lumo chirped once more, as if answering to his new name. Mira stayed there for a long time, feeding him berries and speaking softly. She told him about her home, about her parents, and about how she sometimes felt lonely, because other children thought she was strange. Lumo tilted his head as if he understood every word. As the sun climbed higher, Mira knew she had to return home soon. She stood up slowly. Lumo gave a soft cry, his wings fluttering weakly. Mira knelt down again and stroked his head gently with her finger. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll come back tomorrow. I promise." With that, she turned and walked back toward her family's house, her heart full of excitement. She kept looking over her shoulder, and each time she did, Lumo was still there, watching her with glowing eyes. For Mira, the world of Rivora had always been full of wonders. But now, with Lumo, it felt even more magical. She had found something special, something no one else knew about. She did not realize it yet. But this small meeting by the river was the start of an adventure that would change not only her life, but also the lives of many others on Rivora. The next morning, Mira woke earlier than usual. The sun had just touched the edge of the horizon, and golden light spilled across the fields outside her family's home. She dressed quickly, tied her hair with a ribbon, and carried a small basket filled with berries and bread. Her mother noticed her rushing and called, "Mira, where are you going so early?" "Just to the river," Mira answered, trying to sound casual. Her mother smiled and nodded, not suspecting anything. Mira slipped out the door, her heart racing with excitement. The path to the river was quiet. Only the sound of birds calling and the soft rustle of leaves followed her steps. When she reached the sand where she had found the egg, her eyes lit up. Lumo was there waiting. He sat on his little legs, wings folded, head turning as soon as he saw her. His glowing eyes brightened and he gave a cheerful chirp. Mira ran the last few steps and sat down beside him. "I told you I would come back," she said happily. She placed the basket between them and offered him a berry. Lumo snapped it up, his tail swishing behind him. Then he crawled closer and rested his small head against her leg. Mira laughed softly. "You like me already, don't you?" The two spent hours together. Mira taught Lumo simple games like rolling a pebble back and forth. At first, Lumo clumsily pawed at the stone, but soon he learned to push it with his nose and even caught it in his mouth. Each time he succeeded, Mira clapped her hands and Lumo flapped his wings in joy. Over the next days, Mira returned again and again. Sometimes she brought fruits, sometimes bread, and once she even sneaked a piece of cheese from the kitchen. Lumo ate everything she offered, chirping happily after each bite. His little body grew stronger. His wings stretched wider and he began hopping short distances. One afternoon, Mira picked up a stick and drew shapes in the sand. "This is my house," she said, sketching a square. "And this is me." She drew a small circle. Lumo tilted his head, then used his tail to swipe at the sand. By accident, he made a long line across her drawing. Mira giggled. "That can be your house," she said, adding another square. Lumo chirped as if agreeing. Soon Mira gave him a name out loud every time she arrived. "Lumo," she called gently, and he always came running, wings flapping, eyes glowing. He had begun to recognize her voice. Sometimes he even repeated a sound close to her name. It was not clear, but when he chirped Mira, her heart leapt. But not everyone was as enchanted as Mira. At home, her father began to notice her slipping away each day. One evening, while they ate dinner, he asked, "Mira, what keeps you so busy near the river?" Mira hesitated. She wanted to tell him about Lumo, but she feared he might be frightened. "I just like playing there," she said. Her father frowned slightly but said nothing more. The other children in the colony also teased her. One boy laughed and said, "Mira talks to rocks and trees." She ignored him, but inside she felt lonely. Only Lumo truly listened without judgment. As days turned into weeks, Mira and Lumo's bond grew stronger. She began teaching him small gestures. She waved her hand, saying, "Goodbye." Lumo tried to mimic, lifting one wing in a clumsy wave. She clapped, and he copied the sound with his wings. Each success made Mira smile wider. One special moment came when Mira bent down and kissed Lumo gently on the forehead. She whispered, "You're my little cutie." Lumo made a soft sound, almost like a purr, and pressed closer to her. From that moment, their bond felt unbreakable. But even as Mira felt joy, shadows stirred in the forest. Sometimes she noticed glowing eyes watching from far away. Once she heard a low rumble like a distant growl. She told herself it was just the wind or animals, but deep down she wondered if Lumo's family was nearby. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Mira lay on the grass while Lumo curled beside her. She traced the sky with her finger. "One day you'll fly high above those trees," she said. Lumo stretched his wings proudly. Though he could still only glide a few feet, Mira laughed. "Yes, my brave little flyer." At that moment she felt something deep inside. Lumo was not just a creature she had found. He was her friend, maybe even more than that, like a brother who had come from another world. She promised silently that she would protect him no matter what. When she returned home that night, her mother noticed the dirt on her dress and the glow of happiness in her eyes. "You look like you found a treasure," her mother teased. Mira smiled but said nothing. She knew her secret was safe with Lumo for now, but secrets never stay hidden forever. The days on Rivora passed quickly for Mira. Every morning she hurried to the river with food tucked in her basket. Every evening she returned with a smile that her parents could not explain. The secret of Lumo filled her with joy. He was no longer just a hatchling she had found, he was her closest friend. Lumo grew faster than she expected. His wings stretched wider each week, his scales shining with richer colors when the sunlight touched him. Sometimes they glowed faintly in the dark, making him look like a lantern moving through the grass. Mira loved that glow and often whispered, "That's why your name fits you. You're my light." Together they created games. Mira would run in circles and Lumo would chase her, hopping and gliding with his small wings. When she hid behind trees, he sniffed the air and always found her. Once he surprised her by jumping onto a low branch and then dropping down beside her. She laughed so hard that she fell into the grass, but not everything was play. Mira was determined to teach Lumo. She clapped her hands twice and said, "Come here." At first he tilted his head in confusion. After many tries, he finally began to respond. Each time he rushed toward her, she hugged him and he chirped proudly. She even taught him to wave his wing when she waved her hand. It was clumsy, but it made her heart swell with pride. The forest around them seemed to welcome their friendship. Birds sang above and small animals peeked from bushes, curious about the unusual pair. Mira often spoke to Lumo as if he understood every word. "You know," she said one afternoon while tossing a pebble into the river, "the other children don't really like me. They think I'm strange, but I don't mind, because I have you." Lumo tilted his head and chirped softly. He crawled closer and pressed against her side, his scales warm under her hand. Mira smiled and whispered, "See, you understand me." One afternoon, Mira's secret almost slipped away. She was late returning home and her father grew worried. He went searching for her along the paths near the forest. Mira, busy teaching Lumo how to roll a berry with his nose, did not notice until she heard her father's voice calling, "Mira, where are you?" Her heart jumped. She turned quickly to Lumo and whispered, "Hide." Lumo, sensing her urgency, slipped into the tall grass and flattened himself to the ground. Just as her father appeared, Mira stood up, brushing dirt from her dress. "There you are," her father said with relief. "You shouldn't wander so far alone." "I was just playing by the river," Mira replied, trying to sound calm. Her father looked around but saw nothing unusual. With a sigh, he took her hand and led her home. Lumo stayed hidden until they were gone. That night, Mira felt torn. She wanted to tell her parents about Lumo, but she feared they might see him as dangerous. She hugged her pillow and whispered into the darkness, "I'll keep you safe, Lumo, no matter what." The next day, Mira returned to the river as usual. When Lumo saw her, he bounded forward with excitement, knocking her gently onto the grass. She laughed, hugging him tightly. To her, he was not frightening. He was family. Their bond grew deeper with each passing week. One evening, while the sky turned pink with sunset, Mira lay on her back watching the clouds. Lumo curled beside her, his tail wrapped around her arm. She pointed upward. "Do you see that, Lumo? One day you'll fly up there, maybe even higher than the birds." Lumo spread his wings proudly and gave a small flap. Though he still could not lift himself more than a few feet, Mira cheered as if he had flown across the sky. "You're amazing," she said, "my little flyer." At times, Mira noticed strange movements in the forest. A rustle too heavy for the wind, eyes that glowed faintly between the trees. Once she heard a low rumble, almost like thunder, but the sky was clear. She wondered if there were others like Lumo watching. She did not tell her parents for fear they would forbid her from visiting. One special afternoon, Mira leaned close and kissed Lumo on the top of his head. His scales felt warm and his eyes glowed brighter. "You're not ugly," she whispered with a smile. "You're my little cutie." Lumo made a soft purring sound, almost like a cat, and pressed his head against her cheek. The moment filled Mira with happiness so deep that she thought her chest might burst. The world around them was changing, though Mira did not yet understand. Lumo was growing and his kind were near. The colony, too, was alert to the sounds in the forest. But for Mira, there was only joy in the simple friendship she had found. She returned home late that evening with grass in her hair and dirt on her hands. Her mother laughed gently and said, "You look like you've been wrestling with the wind." Mira only smiled, thinking of the friend who waited for her by the river. That night she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She knew Lumo was more than just a secret. He was a promise that no matter how different two beings might be, kindness could bring them together. And in her young heart, she believed that promise was strong enough to last forever. The forest edge glowed with evening light when Mira hurried home one day, her basket empty after sharing every berry with Lumo. She had stayed too long, and by the time she reached the house, her parents were waiting outside. Her father crossed his arms. "Mira, you disappear every day," he said. "Where do you go?" "We worry," Mira lowered her eyes. She wanted to explain, but she feared they would not understand. "I just play by the river," she whispered. Her mother placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You must tell us if you are keeping a secret. The forest can be dangerous." Mira nodded, but inside she held tightly to her promise to Lumo. She would not betray him. The next morning, she rushed back to the river. Lumo greeted her with happy chirps, running to meet her. Mira knelt to hug him, but her joy was cut short when she heard voices in the distance. Other children were nearby, laughing and chasing each other through the trees. Mira's heart raced. "Stay here," she whispered to Lumo, guiding him into the tall grass. She stood in front of him, hoping to block the view. Too late. A boy named Rian stepped onto the riverbank and froze when he saw the glowing eyes peeking from the grass. "What's that?" he shouted. Mira panicked. "It's nothing, just a shadow." But Lumo, curious, crawled out. His small wings fluttered, his tail swished, and he chirped at Mira as if asking why she was worried. The other children screamed. One girl ran back toward the colony, shouting, "Monster! Monster in the forest!" Mira tried to calm them. "No, he's not a monster. He's my friend." But the children did not listen. They scattered, their voices carrying far. Within an hour, Mira's father and several colony leaders arrived with tools and lanterns. Mira stood in front of Lumo, her arms spread wide. "Step back, Mira," her father ordered, his face pale with shock. "That thing could hurt you." "He would never hurt me," Mira cried. She turned to Lumo, who lowered himself to the ground and chirped softly, sensing her distress. "See? He's gentle. Please don't harm him." The leaders spoke in hushed voices. One man whispered, "We don't know what it is." "It could be dangerous," another said. "If there's one, there may be more." Mira shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "He's not dangerous. His name is Lumo. He's my friend." Her father's expression softened for a moment, seeing her protect the creature with all her courage. But fear weighed heavily on the group. Strange roars had been heard in the forest at night, and now this hatchling stood before them. Lumo looked from Mira to the adults. He made a low chirping sound, almost like a plea. He pressed his head against Mira's leg, showing trust. "Please," Mira begged. "Just watch him. He listens to me." "I can show you," she clapped twice. Lumo tilted his head, then waddled over to her as he had been taught. She hugged him tightly. "See? He understands." The adults were silent, uncertain. Some eyes showed fear, others curiosity. Mira's father finally sighed. "For now we leave him here. But this cannot remain a secret any longer. The colony must decide." Mira's heart sank. She nodded slowly, knowing she could not stop them from speaking. But she held Lumo close, whispering, "I'll protect you. Don't be afraid." That night the colony gathered in the meeting hall. Lanterns cast long shadows across the walls. The news spread quickly. Mira had found a strange creature near the river. People argued in worried voices. It could be a threat. It might bring others like it. But the girl says it's gentle. Mira stood before them, small but determined.
"He's not a monster," she said firmly.
"He eats berries, he plays with me, he listens when I speak. He's kind. Please don't fear him." Her words touched some hearts, but others shook their heads. "We cannot risk the safety of our children for an alien beast," one woman said sharply. Mira's father stood, torn between his duty to protect the colony and his love for his daughter. He finally said, "Tomorrow we will watch. If the creature shows danger, we act. If not, we wait." Mira was relieved, though fear still lingered. She hurried back to her room, whispering into the night, "Hold on, Lumo. They will see your heart like I do." Meanwhile, far beyond the river, shadows moved through the forest. Larger shapes with glowing eyes stirred in the darkness. They had been watching from afar, and now they crept closer, drawn by the sound of frightened voices and the scent of their young. Mira did not know it yet, but the world she loved was about to change. The bond she had formed with Lumo was strong, but it would soon be tested by fear, doubt, and the arrival of his kin. The morning after the meeting, the colony was restless. People whispered in the streets. Children stayed close to their parents, and the forest that had once seemed calm now felt filled with unseen eyes. Mira could sense the tension in every step her family took, but her heart was set on only one thought: Lumo. She needed to see him. With her father's cautious permission, she was allowed to return to the river, but this time he and 2 other adults followed at a distance. They carried lanterns and tools prepared for danger. When Mira reached the riverbank, Lumo bounded forward with joy, chirping happily. He nudged her hand, glowing eyes bright in the daylight. Mira knelt and hugged him tightly. I'm here, Lumo, don't worry. Her father and the others watched from a few steps back, their faces tense. One of the men muttered, It looks harmless now, but what happens when it grows? Mira pretended not to hear. For a while everything was calm. Mira fed Lumo berries and laughed as he tried to flap his wings high enough to lift himself. He managed a short glide, landing in the grass with a tumble. Mira clapped her hands, cheering for him. But then the forest stirred. A heavy rumble echoed from deep among the trees. The ground trembled softly, and birds with crystal wings scattered into the sky. Mira froze, her hand on Lumo's back. The adults stepped forward, gripping their tools. Something's coming, her father whispered. From the shadow of the trees, glowing eyes appeared, many of them. Large shapes moved slowly into the light. Their scales shimmered like Lumo's, but their bodies were far greater, their wings broad and strong. The air filled with a deep growl that rolled like thunder. The colony men raised their lanterns, their faces pale. By the stars, one of them breathed. There are more, Mira's heart pounded. She glanced at Lumo, who chirped in excitement at the sight of the larger beings. His tail swished, and he tried to run toward them. Mira held him back, whispering, Wait, Lumo, not yet. The adults muttered nervously. We need to protect the colony. If these things attack— No! Mira cried, standing tall in front of Lumo. Her voice shook but carried strength. They won't attack. Please don't be afraid. The larger creatures stepped closer, their eyes glowing in the dim light. One spread its wings, casting a shadow across the riverbank. The ground vibrated beneath their weight. Mira's father pulled her back, but she broke free and stood with her arms wide in front of Lumo. He's my friend. He's not dangerous. Please trust me. For a long moment, silence hung heavy. The colony adults stood ready. The great creatures loomed, and Mira's small voice was the only bridge between them. Then something happened. One of the larger aliens lowered its head and gave a deep rumbling sound. Lumo chirped loudly in reply and flapped his wings. The larger being tilted its head, then stepped closer to Mira. The adults gasped, ready to strike, but Mira lifted her hand. Wait, she shouted. She turned to the creature, her voice soft now. He's with me. He's safe. The great alien studied her, its glowing eyes calm rather than hostile. Slowly it lowered itself onto the sand, bringing its face close to Mira and Lumo. Lumo rushed forward and rubbed his head against the larger one, chirping with joy. Mira smiled, relief washing over her. She reached out and touched the creature's scales. They were warm, and she could feel the steady beat of life beneath. You see? She said, turning to her father. They understand. The adults hesitated, unsure. Fear still weighed on them, but the sight of Mira standing safely between the creatures began to shift their hearts. But the moment did not last. From deeper in the forest came more roars, louder this time. Dozens of glowing eyes appeared, moving closer. The colony men tensed again. There are too many, one whispered. Mira held Lumo close. Don't be afraid, she told him, though her own heart raced. She looked up at the larger creature. Please don't hurt us. We want to be friends. The creature made a low sound, almost like an answer. It seemed to understand her fear and stepped back, spreading its wings as if to shield her. From the colony wall far behind, bells rang. Guards had seen the shapes in the forest. Families rushed to gather their children, and fear spread through the settlement. The people believed the aliens were preparing to attack. Mira stood in the middle of it all, her small hands gripping Lumo. She knew the truth in her heart. These beings were not monsters. They were his kin, and they had come for him. But if the colony acted out of fear, war could break out before anyone understood. Her father pulled her back gently. Mira, we must return now. Tears filled her eyes. She hugged Lumo tightly. I won't leave him, Mira. No. He belongs with me. The great alien tilted its head again, watching her carefully. It gave a deep rumble, softer this time, and Mira realized it was waiting for her, for trust, for choice. The air between humans and aliens was heavy with tension, and the smallest spark could break the fragile balance. The forest edge grew tense as more glowing eyes appeared among the trees. The colony guards rang bells, warning everyone of the danger. Families gathered their children, voices rose in fear, and the sound of shutters closing echoed through the small settlement. On the riverbank, Mira stood frozen between her people and the creatures of the forest. Lumo clung close to her, chirping softly, while the great alien beside him spread its wide wings like a shield. The colony adults whispered anxiously. "They're surrounding us." Her father's face was pale. "We must go before it's too late," but Mira shook her head. She stepped forward, holding Lumo tightly in her arms. "Please don't be afraid. They're not here to hurt us. They came because of Lumo." The larger creature lowered its head as if agreeing. Its eyes glowed faintly, not with anger but with calm. It gave a low rumble, a sound that was deep yet gentle. Lumo chirped in reply, wriggling free of Mira's arms to run forward. He rubbed his small head against the larger creature's chest. The adults gasped. Some stepped back, others lifted their tools higher, unsure whether to strike or wait. But Mira's father watched closely. He saw how the great creature bent down carefully so as not to harm the little hatchling. He saw how its wings folded gently as though to keep both Lumo and Mira safe. "Mira," her father said quietly, "what if you are right?" "I know I am right," Mira said firmly, her eyes bright with tears. "Lumo is kind. His family is kind too. Please believe me." The colony leaders arrived soon after, drawn by the commotion. They carried lanterns and spoke in stern voices. "We cannot trust them," one declared. "If they attack, we will lose everything." But before the crowd could grow louder, Mira stepped forward again. She placed her small hand on the great creature's warm scales. "Please," she said. "Look." The great alien leaned its head down, letting Mira touch it without resistance. Its glowing eyes softened, reflecting her image inside. The sight silenced the crowd. For the first time, they saw not a monster, but a living being responding to kindness. One leader muttered, "It listens to her." Another whispered, "Perhaps it does not wish for war." Mira's father nodded slowly. "We must try to understand them. If we attack out of fear, we may destroy what could be peace." The colony stood uncertain, but Mira's courage planted a seed of hope. The days that followed were filled with careful watching. The larger aliens did not attack. They stayed near the forest edge, watching the colony but never crossing into it. Lumo remained with Mira, but his kin came closer each evening as if checking on him. Mira spent hours showing the adults how Lumo listened. She clapped and he came. She waved and he waved his wing. She kissed his head and he purred softly. Each time the colony saw more proof that he was not a danger. Slowly, fear began to soften. A few brave neighbors approached the river with Mira, though they stayed at a safe distance. They watched as Lumo played with her, chasing pebbles and splashing in the water. One child, braver than the rest, whispered, "He really is cute." Mira smiled. "He's my little cutie. He's not ugly. He's not scary. He's my friend." Lumo chirped happily, and even the adults smiled faintly at the sound. The colony leaders held another meeting. Voices were less sharp this time. Some still worried, but others spoke of what they had seen. If these creatures wished to harm us, they would have done so already. "The girl has built a bond with one. Perhaps that bond is our path to peace." Her father stood and spoke with calm strength. "We came to Rivora to build a future. If we close our hearts to those who live here, we will never find it. Let us choose trust, not fear." It was not an easy choice, but in the end the leaders agreed to wait, to watch and not to strike, unless the creatures attacked first. That night, Mira returned to the river. The great alien was waiting, with several others behind it. Mira stepped forward, Lumo at her side. She bowed her head slightly, imitating the respectful gesture her father had taught her to show elders. To her surprise, the great alien lowered its head in return. The others behind it did the same. Mira's eyes shone with joy. "They understand," she whispered. She held Lumo's hand and said softly, "Thank you. I promise we will keep you safe here." The great alien rumbled low, a sound that felt like a promise in return. From that evening onward, the colony began to change. Fear did not vanish, but hope grew. People spoke less of danger and more of curiosity. Children whispered about the light-eyed creatures, wondering what they ate, how they flew, and if they dreamed like humans did. Mira knew the bond she had built with Lumo had done more than give her a friend. It had created a bridge between two worlds. She looked at the sky, stars shining above Rivora, and thought, this is only the beginning. And deep in her heart, she knew that peace could last, if both humans and aliens chose kindness over fear. Weeks passed since the first encounter at the riverbank. The colony had begun to accept that Lumo and his kin were not a threat. Fear still lingered in some hearts, but Mira's courage and trust had shown everyone a new path. Every morning she ran to the river, And every evening she returned home smiling, with Lumo at her side and his kin watching from the forest edge. The two friends had grown even closer. Lumo could glide longer distances now, hopping from rock to rock and finally lifting into the air for short flights. Mira laughed each time he soared above her, his tiny wings catching the sunlight. "Look at you, my little flyer," she said, clapping her hands. Lumo chirped and returned to her, pressing his glowing head against her cheek. The colony children, who had once teased Mira for playing alone, began to watch with curiosity. Some of the braver ones even approached slowly. Mira encouraged them gently. "See, he's gentle. You don't need to be afraid." Soon other children began to play simple games with Lumo. They rolled pebbles, clapped and waved, and Lumo imitated their movements, chirping happily. The laughter of humans and the gentle sounds of the aliens echoed along the river, blending into a new harmony. Mira's parents watched her from a distance, their eyes filled with pride. Her father finally said, "She has taught us something very important. Not all differences mean danger. Sometimes they mean friendship." One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, Mira sat on a large rock beside the river. Lumo curled up next to her, his wings folded neatly. Mira stroked his glowing scales. "You've grown so much," she whispered. "But you'll always be my little cutie." Lumo chirped softly in reply, nuzzling her hand. The great alien, standing a few steps away, lowered its head toward them as if approving the words. Mira understood the gesture clearly. It was a sign of respect, trust, and the beginning of understanding between their species. The colony had begun to learn from Mira. They watched how Lumo and his kin moved, how they communicated, and how they reacted to kindness. Slowly, humans discovered that fear was not always the answer. They realized that peace could come when hearts were open, not closed. One morning, Mira decided to take Lumo further along the forest path than ever before. His wings had grown strong, and he could glide over small clearings. She held his hand tightly as they walked, the forest alive with sounds of birds, insects, and the rustling of leaves. Suddenly, they reached a hidden waterfall, sparkling with colors in the morning sun. Mira gasped. "I've never seen this place," she whispered. Lumo chirped and fluttered his wings, delighted by the new space. Mira laughed and threw a small pebble into the pool, watching the ripples spread across the water. It was a perfect moment of peace. Mira hugged Lumo tightly. "We can explore together," she said softly. "No matter where we go, I promise we'll face everything together." Back at the colony, adults discussed plans for the future. They wanted to ensure that humans and aliens could live side by side safely. Training areas were set up where humans could learn to communicate with the alien creatures. The children practiced simple gestures, feeding the aliens and understanding their sounds. Mira helped teach these lessons, guiding her friends with patience and care. Through it all, Lumo remained at her side. He chirped proudly whenever Mira spoke to the group. Sometimes, when the lessons were over, he would fly high and glide down, showing off his skills. The children clapped, amazed at how well he had learned. Mira smiled. "See? He's amazing, isn't he?" One evening, as the sky turned golden and the stars began to appear, Mira sat beside Lumo and whispered, "We've done something incredible. You, me, and all of them. We've shown that kindness can change everything." Lumo chirped in agreement, pressing his head gently against hers. From the forest edge, the great alien watched quietly, and Mira felt its silent presence as a promise that humans and aliens could share this world peacefully. Mira stood, brushing dirt from her dress. "Tomorrow we'll explore more," she said to Lumo. He chirped excitedly, flapping his wings. She reached out her hand and he took it. Together they looked at the forest stretching beyond the river. It was full of life, full of promise, and full of hope. Mira smiled, knowing that the adventure was not over. There would be challenges and fear might rise again, but the bond she had formed with Lumo and the understanding she had helped create was stronger than any worry. "Always together," she whispered. "You and me, little cutie." Lumo chirped loudly, and for a long moment the two friends simply stood there, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. The glowing eyes of Lumo's kin flickered softly in the forest. Mira knew they were watching over him, but they also trusted her. In that moment, Mira understood something very important. Courage, kindness, and trust could change the world. Even between species, even between beings who seemed completely different, friendship could grow. And from that friendship, a future full of hope could begin. The colony slept quietly that night, unaware of the silent bond forming by the river. Mira held Lumo close, feeling his warmth and hearing his gentle chirps. She knew that together, they could face anything. Together, they had made a promise for a peaceful world, for understanding, and for love between all who lived on Rivora. And in the stillness of the night, with stars shining above, Mira and Lumo dreamed of adventures yet to come,